All right. Welcome to the Final Guys podcast. I'm Jack, and my two cohorts, Jason Brandt, Hunter Shea. How you doing, fellas?
Go
I'm
ahead.
feeling jiggy.
Jiggy
That's-
with it?
Yeah,
I'm
jiggy with
getting
it.
jiggy. I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, I'm
It's
still
almost
on my
4th of
coffee.
July.
I'm not quite there.
You're on your coffee. I'm on straight vodka. So this is why I'm jiggy and you're not.
Jesus.
So today we're going to talk about a movie. Ironically, while we are here at the 4th of July weekend, we're going to be talking about, on a day where everybody has the day off, we're going to be talking about a movie about the workplace. So we're going to cover the Belko Experiment today. But before that, we'll hit some news. You guys ready for some news?
I'm ready.
Yeah.
First of all, we are recording this on July 3rd because of the holiday. And I wanted to wish you both a happy Return of the Living Dead Day. Because
Fake news.
today is the day on Return of the Living Dead when they open up the screen. It sets it as July 3rd, 1984, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Oh, no way.
So annually, this is Return of the Living Dead Day. So brains to both of you.
Send more paramedics.
All right, and then the next piece of news I have for you is one of the things I find with news on this show is that it's most fun to talk about things that kind of piss us off. So I'm going to start with something like that.
We're becoming like those cranky old Muppets in the balcony.
Oh man.
But
You suck.
it's like TV news or sports radio. It's more fun when you're negative. Well, here's this. What movie was screaming for a sequel for 18 years? I'll tell you, it was Deep Blue Sea. Guess what, boys? Deep Blue Sea sequel filming in Africa as we speak.
Is
I
Samuel
saw that.
Jackson in it?
Samuel L. Jackson's not in because he was swallowed in the classic.
He can still come back.
True.
Could have been pooped out.
I saw this as a Sci-Fi Channel movie.
It is a sci-fi channel. I'm actually surprised they haven't done a direct-to-cable sci-fi sequel to this a lot earlier, because there's like 100 sequels to 100 other movies that are like wait, Tremors 16 or whatever. There's like all these sequels that go straight to sci-fi. So that's what this is going to do. So I imagine at some point this will come. We'll watch it, laugh. There'll be the obligatory cloning of the Samuel L. Jackson kill,
Oh, yeah.
done in that somehow.
The CG will somehow be worse than it was in the first one.
Yeah. And the big question is, will there be another LL Cool J like song at the end? My head is like a Sharks fan.
I forgot about that.
Is the title of this Deep Blue Sea Lowered Expectations?
Deeper, bluer.
Seer.
See you. See you later. Let's see. Okay. So our first show, we talked about Alien Covenant. Word on the street is that the Blu-ray is coming out soon, and there'll be just under 20 minutes of deleted scenes. So we're going to get a lot of extra footage to fill in the blanks on that movie. So I don't plan on buying the Blu-ray for this, but if somehow I can track down the deleted scenes, I'd be curious to see what they left out of this movie on the, to get it down to a runtime that they were happy with.
Hey, it's a Ridley Scott joint, so this will be the first of 433 director's cuts.
Right. Maybe he'll get some footage from The Shining and sneak it in there like he did with Blade Runner. Maybe there will be a dream of a unicorn for no goddamn reason.
Hey, speaking of Blade Runner, I'm psyched to see the new Blade Runner movie.
I am too, because he's not directing it. I hate to say that because it makes he's made some of my favorite movies ever, but he's gotten weird over the years. So yeah.
There are very few directors who are still on their A game at 80.
Well,
In fact,
B game.
Clint Eastwood might be the only one I could think of.
Get off my lawn.
Oh, Gran Torino's so good.
Okay. Moving on. What movie was screaming for a prequel? Let me answer that for you. It was Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Hey, all right. I love anything with Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
There's been a long-awaited Leatherface movie that's a prequel, and it finally has gotten a release date. It's going to come out on October 20th. I think just a VOD. It's not going to theaters, although maybe it'll go to Alamo or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be October 20th, but like me, if you have DirecTV, it'll be available on September 21st. So,
Ooh. The only TCM movie I didn't like was that Leatherface one where they made Leatherface the kind of like the good guy. You sympathize for him, like, no, that's not what this whole series is about. But I love that universe. It get as weird as they want it to get. I even love the Matthew McConaughey one.
That's what I was just going to ask. You like that?
I love that, man. That's just batshit crazy.
I have not seen all of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or sequels, but isn't there one with Alexandra Daddario?
Yes.
Yeah, I need to see that one.
Mm-hmm. Need to see anything with her.
Some of the people in this prequel: Stephen Dorff from Blade,
Well, that's
Lily
doomed.
Taylor from The Conjuring, and Finn Jones, TV's Iron Fist.
Oh, the only Marvel dud.
Yeah,
Why is Stephen Dorff the kiss of death for movies? I've never thought he was a bad actor or anything. He's in
his
some
name
decent
is
stuff.
Dorff.
But man, when he's in it, it just tanks at the box office.
Yeah, he's like a lower budget Johnny Depp.
Do you
was
think
awesome.
we really need a prequel to
Anything.
Leatherface?
Yes, I want to know the genesis. How did this family get this way?
But what
They
if it's like
banged
Anakin
each other.
Skywalker and it's like little, "Oh, I'm gonna win a race.
It has to be dark. It has to be really dark. Whatever happened there.
I hate prequels. I hate them in books. I hate them in shows. I hate them in movies because you already know what's going to happen. There's no tension for me because I know the ultimate endpoint.
Okay.
Yeah,
But you're writing a prequel right now to Ash, right?
No.
I'm joking.
Hell no.
And then the final news story I have is one that, let's just say Hunter was reading the news and he presented this. This would be the one where I would lose my freaking mind. There is, and you're not going to be surprised for a second about this. There's talk of rebooting Nightmare on Elm Street again.
Awesome.
It's
Who is going to play Freddy?
Well, this
Cedric
is
the Entertainer, please.
the reason why Cedric the Entertainer. The reason why I even brought this up is because of the name that came up as somebody who expressed interest in playing Freddy, and it's not confirmed he would or not, but he's thrown his hat in the ring. Kevin Bacon.
Oh.
You know something? Thanks to all
Oh.
those years of smoking, he looks like Freddy without makeup.
Again, like at first I was like, "What?" And then I was like, "Wait a minute."
That's interesting, actually.
Is this the one where Wilfred Brimley is playing Heather Langenkamp's role?
Yes. And Freddy gives her diabetes.
He has insulin, on
Insulin?
his fingers.
Who owns
Time
these
for your
movies now?
shot.
Is it
What?
Sony?
Um,
I'm just asking because
I did not put that down on my notes.
they screw everything up, so I'm just assuming it's Sony.
I-
You know,
I feel like they don't need go make a new monster. Let's just leave Freddy alone.
I'm trying to look for the positive here, and maybe the positive is we're not going to get a sequel to the last one, which was not my favorite.
Exactly.
But Kevin Bacon, I mean, that at least sounds interesting.
I would like it if they would, if they're going to do it, they should just take the concept of Freddy and radically change it so that he's not just a guy in dreams. Maybe he's like a guy in the real world who can also get into dreams or something to just change the pattern of the thing and make it a little bit of a different animal. Because like the guy who's just in your dreams, we've had, how many more pots of coffee can I have to stay awake? And wait, I'm dreaming when I didn't realize I was dreaming. You know, like, I don't know.
That's why maybe they should employ a little something called creativity and just let this go and create something new.
Amen, sister.
Get a Hunter Shea novel, damn it.
Yeah.
Or Jason Brandt novel.
Yeah.
Come on, people. Wake up, people.
And that concludes the news portion of our show.
Very nice. You know, actually, talking about them rebooting that. I hadn't heard of that, but I know speaking of Sony, that they're already talking about rebooting the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series. I mean, how old is that first movie?
But wait a second, there's already a foreign and American versions of that.
Right, they're talking about starting again.
Why
Why?
not?
Pick a different tattoo, at least.
The
The
girl with
girl with the tramp stamp.
I was gonna say the girl with the koi fish tattoo.
It really makes me wonder how these decisions get made. How many people are in the room hashing this over? I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do Spider-Man 18. Everybody
Well,
hated the last four of them. Let's do another one.
Marvel thinks they could put anything out. I'm waiting for them to do like Machine Man and Devil
I
Dinosaur.
hate to say it, man. I think Marvel can put anything out. They're crushing.
They'll fail. There will come a day when we're like, wow, these movies are terrible.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm still going to enjoy the ride.
At this moment, Marvel's not the people to be complaining about. They're putting out good stuff.
Oh, exactly.
Okay, let's get to what did we watch this week? And whoever would like to go first, I'd just like to start it off by saying I surprisingly saw a lot of good stuff this week. So, you know how in this genre, it's so hit or miss. And I was on a pretty good streak, so I'm happy. But I've been talking a lot lately. So, Jason, why don't you start us off?
All right, I got quite a bit myself here. It was a very unproductive week again. I started with the movie from last year everyone saw but me called Siren, which was based off the short story from VHS.
Yeah.
This movie, as I'm watching it, I kept thinking, this is ridiculous. Some of this looks really bad. Some of this is just not done well, and I enjoyed it. It was a fun movie, and it should have been a complete piece of shit, but I enjoyed it.
Exactly.
Yep.
There was just something with the tone those guys had that worked for me.
Yeah. If you like that, you'll like the movie Thale. Thale.
That's on Netflix, right?
I don't think so. I found it in Redbox a long time ago.
I swear it might
When
be
we
on
talked
my
about
list.
Siren on Monster Man, we had the same kind of view about it. I felt like it was like when I was a kid, they would show horror movies on like Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and you just kind of be flicking around and you come on like Gargoyles or something like that. And this felt like, you know, sort of a lower level, kind of lower budget horror movie, but you just kind of embraced that factor and just enjoyed it. And it was a pleasant surprise. So I agree with you. Thumbs up on that one.
Yeah, and it shouldn't have been. The whole time I'm just thinking, boy, this looks cheap here, or that doesn't make any sense. This doesn't, and it was fun. I was in. So I watched that. I don't remember where I caught that. Was that on Shudder? I don't think so. I might have actually paid for that one. Speaking of Shudder, though, I did find a movie on there I'd heard of before called Outcast, a 2014 film from Ireland, I believe.
Ooh, well, then it's good.
It was really interesting. A lot of black magic. Oh, wait, that's not the right one I have pulled up. That's some piece of shit with Nicolas Cage. It's It stars the woman from Game of Thrones who's just in Prevenge, the slightly older woman, maybe around 50 in her 40s, whatever.
Breastfeeding lady.
Yes, her. She has a couple nude scenes in this, actually. It's a pretty interesting film. A couple times I had issues understanding what they were saying because their accents were so thick. But some pretty cool looking ritual stuff they do. I always kind of appreciate that because you don't see it in films all that much, done well anyway. So that was pretty interesting, and I liked the general story of this mom and her son are on the run from the son's father, and they're using magic to conceal themselves from him and to protect themselves. And he's doing increasingly crazy rituals and things to try to find them because he's trying to kill the son, and that's you kind of find out why as the story goes on. So I dug it, actually. I liked it. There were a couple parts that I don't want to say drug, but maybe could have been a little better, but I'm kind of nitpicking. It was a really low budget foreign film. For guys like us, definitely worth a watch.
Right. I never even heard of that one.
Some creature effects at the end that were surprisingly well done at times. So I dug it. That was Outcast on Shudder. Last night I introduced the wife for the first time to House, the 1985 gem.
Did you buy the box set?
No, no, I did not pull out a second mortgage on my house to get the box set. For those of you who haven't seen this film, it's incredibly hard to describe. It's a horror comedy about a haunted house. I guess it's not that easy, not that hard to describe. But to describe the tone, it's just weird.
Yeah, it's because it's like a haunted house and multi-dimensional kind of stuff going on.
Well, you go from the guy's son. So basically, a writer, his aunt, I believe, hangs herself in her house and he inherits it. And he's going to sell it, but he decides to stay there. And as the story develops, there's some flashbacks, and you kind of see that his son had disappeared there in a very weird way a couple years before, and it caused he and his wife to get divorced. And he decides to stay there to try to write, which I would think is a horrible idea. But very quickly, he starts to see and experience very weird things. And when I say tonally, this is a crazy film, he'll have a flashback of his son disappearing and how traumatic it was. And then it'll go into this goofy scene where he's dressed up in military fatigues, running through his house, flipping down the stairs and shit, like celebrating. It's just all over the place, but it's really fun. It's just a really fun movie. I enjoy the hell out of it every time I watch it.
It is, and the sequels don't expect the same because they go up to House 4, but they're nothing like the first. And that's William Catt.
Yeah,
and George Wendt.
I can tell you this: Hunter and I are old enough to remember the previews for that movie before it came out, and the trailers made that movie look almost Evil Dead like scary. And then when you watched it, you're like, "What? This is so much more funny than I expected it to be." I really enjoyed that one. Right. I haven't seen it probably in 20 years, but
yeah, I hadn't seen it since my wife and I've been together, and that's been 13 probably. So yeah, definitely worth it.
That's on Shudder, right?
I caught that on Shudder as well. I fell down the rabbit hole a little bit on Shudder. So that was a really good one. I recommend that to anybody. It's I already closed it, but I think it was directed by, was it Fred Decker? Who's done a bunch of horror classics. So
I think he did it, yeah.
Really well done movie. I also jumped into another classic you guys might have heard of from 1984 called A Ghostbusters. We watched
You know what, Jack?
weekend.
Do you know that movie?
No, never heard of that one.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah, it was a release that kind of came and went in the 80s. No one really ever heard of it. Kind of died away. I have a friend.
Is that a remake of the Melissa McCarthy classic?
Yes, it's the
prequel. Jinx.
I don't need to introduce this to anybody. It's one of the all-time classics. It's hilarious. Still some good scares in the beginning. We had a friend over who had never seen it somehow, and she thought it was hilarious and was surprised at some of the scares, particularly towards the beginning. And when the hands come up out of the couch and grab Sigourney Weaver, there's some good shit in there. So I don't need to say more about that. It's fucking Ghostbusters.
Yeah, exactly.
I finally finished Dr. Sleep. The Stephen King sequel.
Oh, you're finally going to stop mentioning it every week?
No, I'm going to mention it next week, too, just to piss you off.
He didn't read the author's note yet.
As everything with Stephen King, it's incredibly well written. Even when nothing's happening, you're still interested just because the guy's characters are awesome. His writing is on point. He's a master. Was this my favorite Stephen King book? No. The story wasn't what I expected or maybe hoped for, is the way to put it. But it wasn't bad. It's just, I don't know. I didn't connect with it as much.
I thought that book was Stephen King laying bare his life in AA.
I think so, too. I 100% am reading all this stuff about being an alcoholic and things and just thinking, is this completely autobiographical? It felt like it.
Yeah, there's a lot that definitely, I was like, well, all right, wow. There's a lot of him in that book, it seems to me. I don't know him personally, but it seems to me there is.
A lot of it hinges on something the character did in his past that was really terrible, and he's hung up on it. And I was wondering, what did King do that he was hung up on for so long? It was interesting. Great book, as always. Anything by King, you're not gonna be pissed off for spending some money on it. And finally, I have the HTC Vive virtual reality headset. I don't know if you guys have heard much about this. It's this really cool system for PC where you put these, I don't know, laser emitters. I don't know what you call them in the corners of your room.
Phaser.
Yeah,
Laser.
and it tracks you through the room. So it's not like, I don't know if you guys have ever tried maybe the Samsung Gear ones where you can look around and see things.
Mhm.
So this, you put the headset on and you have
Hunter, you've
controllers.
used the Porn Master 5000, right? On that,
Yeah. You buy the whole
Oh my
setup.
God.
Yeah.
So much chafing.
set on Dorothy Stratton.
But it was virtual chafing, so I was fine when it was done.
Jesus Christ. You guys should not get this system because you'll blow all your money on porn for credit cards.
Probably.
It's interesting. But so this is they call it room scale. So you can walk around in your room, grab things, move around, duck down behind. I mean, it's really cool. It's incredibly immersive. And I played a zombie game yesterday, actually with my friend. He has one too. My friend I do So Bad It's Good with. He has one of these. And when you load into the game, I can see him standing beside me and he can wave his hands and jump up and down. So of course we're doing crude shit, shooting each other in the dick and whatever else. But you talk, and the further away you get, the quieter it is until you get so far away you can't hear each other speaking and stuff. So it's really immersive in that way. And then you're basically in Arizona and you're trying to get away from this zombie plague. You're trying to find a safe zone. And it is really cool, really intense. When you get 20 or 30 zombies around you, it gets real intense because they're just right in your face. And the other cool thing is you realize how awful you would be in the zombie apocalypse. How it doesn't matter how much ammo you have. So this system is actually accurate within a couple millimeters. So when you're shooting the gun, if you just move your hand a little bit when you pull the trigger, you're going to completely miss. And it's headshots only. So if you miss 2 or 3 shots as these zombies are coming, all of a sudden you're surrounded and you're completely fucked. So I highly recommend that anyway. It's scary as shit.
Did you guys get scared and then just continue shooting each other in the dick?
There was a lot of that.
Zombieland already told me why I'm not going to survive the zombie apocalypse. Cardio.
Yeah.
Remember to double tap.
Like, the zombies are chasing me. I'm going to be like, forget it. I'm done.
So that, boys, is what I did for the week.
All right. Sounds good. Mr. Shea.
I did not have as much time to waste as Jason, but I did catch a few things. I finally saw, and you guys, I think Jason, you talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I saw Life, finally, and I loved it. My wife hates anything that deals with space. Even Alien, she thinks it's a stupid movie because it's in space.
What?
Yeah, but she's got a thing for Jake Gyllenhaal, so she was like, "Oh, yeah, let's watch Life." I'm like, "Yeah, I know what this is about." It's such a fun monster movie, and
it's the thing in space, right?
Absolutely, or Alien, but cool, not cooler, but just a cool take on it, and I loved the ending of it.
Me too.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm waiting for not having to pay for it like Netflix or on cable.
Jake Gyllenhaal, I think he must have shot Nightcrawler right around the same time because he looks really thin and weird like he did in Nightcrawler. He's really creepy looking in this movie and kind of spacey. But that was excellent. Great monster movie. And then I watched Demons the week before. And as promised, I went to Shudder and I watched Demons 2, Electric Boogaloo, which sees the team of Argento and Baba reunited. And this time, this is how far out they went this time. Instead of gathering people in a movie theater and they watch a movie on the big screen that starts the demon stuff going, they put them in an apartment building and they watch TV. Crazy. The apartment building, it's funny because once the demons start coming about and killing everybody, nobody can get out. It's the windows won't break, the doors won't open, and it kind of reminded me of the Belko Experiment. But nothing they can do that can get out, including there's a health club in the building, and the guy who played the pimp in the first one, who died in the first one, he comes back here. He's a trainer, a personal trainer, and he takes all these people in their leotards and their workout gear, and they run into the basement, and they spend the next half hour going batshit insane trying to get out of there by ramming cars into the garage door, throwing cars against doors, setting things on fire. It is absolutely hysterical. The whole movie, it's not as good as Demons, but it's still better than most of the shit that you see that comes out today or even back then in the 80s. This was, I think, 1985, 86 when it came out. Dario Argento's daughter, Aja Argento, was in it.
She must have been young.
Well, she's not nude because she's like 11. Because he always puts her in his movies and she's always nude. And I'm like going, that is so creepy. But yeah, she was only like 11 years old. But it's a lot of fun. Again, it had a cool soundtrack. Instead of a lot of like hard rock metal from the 80s, they were doing like more new wave stuff this time around. And there's also thugs on the outside trying to get in that makes no sense whatsoever. But it doesn't matter because it's demons killing people and it looks like they had a little more money for better effects. So check out Demons 2. And then I heard there's a 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, and possibly 7th, but they're not named Demons. I got to look this up. Like I said, I'm no Italian horror movie expert. So if anyone knows what the name of the subsequent movies are, let me know, and I'll work my way through this. Damn it! And that's all I watched. I finished up Master of None, the Aziz Ansari show on Netflix, which I absolutely love, and it's a romantic comedy this season. I won't go into it because it's not appropriate for here, but it's awesome. And I did read a book called The Ascension Mysteries, which is by David Wilcock, who folks will know him from the Ancient Aliens show on the History Channel. Mm-hmm. I am not an Ancient Aliens person. I picked up the book. It was in the library. I said, let me just give it a shot. It's big. It's like almost 500 pages. And it's basically, here's the different thing about it. The first maybe 250 pages is David Wilcock recounting his childhood. So it's an autobiography of a guy who eventually becomes an ancient alien theorist. So I actually thought that was kind of cool because he was an outsider and he got into drugs and he became a punk and just a total asshole. And it's cool to see these little things that happen to him that like take him on this journey. Now, when you get to the journey, you're going into various races and wars and battles that have been going on and talking to various deep throats and bizarre shadow organizations that have given him all that. It gets crazy. But you can see how somebody who grew up the way he did can get influenced by this particular, it's not an industry, I don't know what we call this conspiracy corner of aliens and ancient aliens and where we come from, and it's just sheer craziness. So if you ever just want to read something that is so batshit, like Jason, you and I, if we put our collective brains together and said let's come up with the most far out concept we could never get close to this.
Really?
Oh my, not even close. So check it out because it's actually kind of scary to know that there are people, a lot of people who deeply believe this stuff and have the ability to influence other people into believing it. So if it's in your library, check it out. I think it's only in hardcover, so it might be like 30 bucks.
What was the author's name again?
David
Hunter
Wilcock.
Shea.
David Wilcock. So it's The Ascension Mysteries. It was definitely worth reading. It was different. It was one of the few paranormal UFO writers I found out there who actually really exposed themselves the way he did.
Nice.
So that's what I did.
Pretty good stuff. Alrighty then. Got some good stuff here. First of all, gentlemen, I finally watched A Dark Song, which both of you have seen.
Good job.
That movie's great. Wow. That's definitely in the top 10, probably top 5. I know some people who are involved in, for lack of a better word, ritual magic. So
yes, you do.
I like the fact that this movie, in Charmed or any other million things we've watched, open a book, say a paragraph at the most, and something happens. And, I know these people go learning huge texts and going on weekends and going through all kinds of things to learn and trials and all kinds of things to get in touch with all this stuff. So I loved the fact that like the bulk of this movie is the difficulty of the ceremony and the conflict between the two people and what's driving them, and then that third act is just bananas. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's something different, and so wow. And I've been kind of holding off on this one to save it, and then I'm just like, like I got Shudder too, so I've been playing with like watching older movies and what I know is going to be a crappy movie, and finally I was like, no, you know what? I need a good one. I'm going to go check this out, and sure enough, you guys were dead on this one. I loved it.
That's a good palate cleanser.
Without going into spoilers, what did you think of the very end? Like what appears at the end?
They earned it. I think if that could have really turned out poorly, but because I think of all the stuff that happened before it, I kind of liked it. It was, I don't know how else. There's a lot of different ways they could have tried to show that, and so I was kind of the way I saw it was maybe the way she's seeing it is the way that was right for her to see it, and that for somebody else it might look differently. So that's kind of what in my head I said. I'm going to write it off to that.
That's interesting. I like that take on it.
Yeah, I remember at the time thinking that's it, but then as I got a little further away from it, I was like, yeah, okay, I kind of like that.
Yeah, I had to chew on it for a few minutes afterwards. I'm like, okay, what the hell did I just see? And like, I'm glad that I saw it about a week ago. And so I'm, like the further we get from The Mummy, the more I hate that movie. The further I get away from this one, the more I like it. So the next movie I saw, I had heard some people on a podcast talking about found footage movies, and I had never heard of this one and was going to hunt it down. And then it turns out it's a featured movie on Shudder. It's called Ghost Watch from 1992.
I love that movie.
Oh, yeah.
So
that movie.
It's like a documentary, mockumentary, if you will, of a live broadcast from a haunted house. Very, what's that? The Enfield haunting, the poltergeist that The Conjuring was Conjuring 2 was based on, I guess. And so they do the whole like people in the studio audience, or the people in the broadcast studio, and then people in the house, and it's definitely an enjoyable movie. It's got some really cheesy parts and it's got some really brilliant parts. But the great thing is afterwards I was reading about it, and this movie I guess had a War of the Worlds, Blair Witch kind of thing where people believed it, which just goes to show you how gullible the world is. And so I thought that was cool. I didn't really go into how deep of that went, but I think somebody committed suicide. They were so upset by this. That's what one article had said.
Yeah, there was a lot of crazy stuff about that movie, including the fact that the guy who was hosting it on TV was a big-time news personality there at the time.
Oh, really?
So it added a lot of credence, and people legitimately thought it was a regular broadcast. Yeah, it would be like if they had, I don't know, maybe Wolf Blitzer or someone like that hosting it now, and it was on his normal time slot or whatever. People just completely bought it and freaked out.
Fake Ghost.
And Ghost. That movie's actually really well done too. Some of the scares, even stuff in the background, sometimes the camera will pan and in the reflection of a window you'll see the guy.
Yeah. It's not as heavy-handed as so many found footage can be.
I gotta watch. I haven't watched that since the 90s.
I'd never heard of this one. I think actually I had maybe heard of it, but I had no idea. So I enjoyed it. I was. This is one of those ones I was like, oh, this is you have to see this just to be. If you're a horror fan, this is a completist piece. You gotta know this one. So I thumbs up on that one.
I might put that on tonight.
Now, last night I watched another found footage movie that I've been kind of hearing about. It's 2017, so I thought I might as well get this out of the way. It's called 21 Days. Either of you guys seen this movie?
No.
21 Days is there's a haunted house. and nobody's ever been able to stay there for longer than 21 days. They leave their possessions, and all the mirrors have been covered up. And so this group of ghost hunters decide they're going to go in, board themselves in for 21 days, and film everything. It's on, I don't know if it's on Shudder, but it's on Amazon Prime, so I didn't have to pay to watch it. Uh, in the spectrum of found footage movies, it's probably one of the better ones, but it still has the, like, you're so aware you're watching a found footage movie. Everything they say is so, you know, somebody trying to forward the plot of a
Right.
found footage. Well, this is just like what that woman said when we were talking to her before. But there's some great parts where, like, one of the characters will get scared, like this guy, and he screams like a little girl. And things. The girl, the two guys and a girl. The girl's smoking hot. It was an enjoyable enough movie. It has, you know, how these half the fun of these found footage movies is just seeing how they're going to pull off gags. So, like, oh, look, this is moving or that's moving, or and there's so much of a found footage movie is like, oh my god, look, that just happened. How did that happen? So there was a lot of familiar territory. It was a good, like, Amazon Prime level. Watch it and move on to the next one. There's a few good parts, and then there's some heavy-handed things in it. But if I had paid to watch it, like, I might have been like, but it was a good Amazon Prime or Shudder kind of movie.
That was 21 days.
21 days.
Not Sandra Bullock.
Exactly. Again, just set the bar low. I'm suggesting this as a horror movie watch, not a.
I like found footage. I think it's an interesting way that people can get movies made that they couldn't possibly afford to do. I mean, the problem is most of them suck, but when it
these
works,
guys do some fun things with it, and then there's some clumsy parts. The best thing I watched, Dark Song, best movie I watched, but the thing I enjoyed the most, I have heard about this documentary for a long time, and I was actually, like, looking into where I could buy it, and then I found it on Shudder. It's called You're So Cool, Brewster, The Story of Fright Night.
Oh God, that's right up your alley, man.
oh,
It is probably a 2-hour documentary, mostly about Fright Night. They talk about the sequels and remakes for a few minutes at the end. It is awesome. Tom Holland, who's the guy who made Fright Night, he went on to Child's Play and all that. He's the kind of the focal point. They interview almost everybody from the show, including Marcy from Married with Children. She's great. Brewster, Evil Ed. So hearing the backgrounds and stories about Roddy McDowall and Chris Sarandon's in it, and he's awesome. So the stories about the movie are great, but they also talk to, like, the makeup guys and the special effects guys. And man, I walked away. That movie was right in the heyday of the 80s horror special effects. You had the American Werewolf in London, The Howling, Fright Night, all that practical effect. And so the special effect guy, he was a little bit of a smug dude. But once you get past his sort of like, he was talking about, like, well, I worked on the original Ghostbusters. We had some props left over, like, that we didn't use from, like, the old woman in the library. So we used her hands for this scene. Or when Evil Ed's turning from the werewolf back into his body, that's half the actor and half a prosthetic. So it's like a real hand and a fake hand. And they made, like, a whole fake hand with layers of skin, muscle, and everything, so that when his body turns from wolf back to human, they made, like, a real hand, and then they filmed it melting so the layers would go away, and then they showed it backwards, so as if it was going back together. And all the special effects, every time they talk about it, is these people just worked painstakingly to make practical special effects and to keep the bar high in the industry. And, you know, a lot of, you watch the movie now and you kind of get a kick out of it. Like, aha, those are funny 80s special effects, but it's a love letter to this whole thing. It was so great. One of my favorite movies of all time, and this documentary was just like a godsend to me. I can't recommend it enough.
That's
What was the name of it?
docu-porn for you.
The only problem I had with it is there's a guy who does an impression of Peter Vincent who is hosting the thing, and while he does a great impression of Peter Vincent, it was probably the most tedious thing about it. But I let it go. So,
What was the name of it?
You're So Cool, Brewster, the story of Fright Night.
I gotta watch it.
My kids have an autograph from Evil Ed, but because he appeared on The Witches, oh my God, The Witches of Waverly Place.
Ooh.
That's where they know him from.
Okay, it's time to talk about our main feature, the Belko Experiment. So, did everybody do their homework and see the movie?
I watched 40 episodes of Sergeant Bilko, and I don't get the horror. It was a bit of an experiment.
So, the great thing about the Belko Experiment, or the interesting thing, is it's by James Gunn, the man behind Guardians of the Galaxy and Slither, amongst other things. Felicity, I believe, as well. So, this movie had James Gunn written all over it. A couple of ways to describe this movie would be Office Space meets Battle Royale.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like The Purge in the workplace.
Every person's dream.
Yeah. So basically, I guess somebody like to give a quick synopsis.
I think you just did it. The Belko company is in Bogota, Colombia, in the middle of nowhere. And there are a lot of non-Colombians, a lot of foreign workers in there. And they go in, it's a regular day. We find out from a new girl who just started that they put a tracking chip in them because in Bogota, there's a lot of kidnappings. But to make up for going there, they give you a place to live, a company car, a good salary. So they give a quick introduction to, there's a lot of people in this movie, but they do a very good job of establishing character with them. There's a lot of faces you recognize from movies. And it starts out really fast. I mean, they're in the building for a couple of hours, not movie time, when there's an announcement over the PA saying, whatever you're doing, stop right now. 2 people are going to have to be murdered. I don't care how you do it within the next half an hour. And if that doesn't happen, I think that what they say, they're going to murder 10 or something like that. So all these shutters come up on the building. The building's completely locked in. And the movie just goes with whoever is on this loudspeaker, giving them orders of how many people they have to kill. And if they don't kill, they will kill X number of people. And it's just basically people trapped in this building. And you get to see who will be the first to kill, how will they kill, and how batshit insane it will get before it's all over.
Pretty good synopsis.
Thank you.
So what'd you think?
I like this movie a lot. I thought it was fun the whole way through. I actually expected it to be gorier than it was. I thought there was going to be hacked limbs, cut up fingers and stuff, and there really wasn't a lot of that. There were some kills that were pretty hardcore, but I don't know, I think because everybody kept talking about how intense and insane it was, I kept thinking it was going to be this gore fest, and it wasn't. And I think that actually helped the movie a lot. I think it would be a little more accessible to people who maybe wouldn't want to watch something like this. But I thought it was well done. They did a great job with casting in this movie. You're going to recognize 10 or 12 of the actors. You might not know what they're from, but you're going to recognize them. So I thought they did a really good job with that. They did a good job getting Tony Goldwyn, who's the asshole from Ghost. He was the bad guy in Ghost, kind of the deceitful guy. I don't know what he's doing, but he looks the same.
Oh, I know. What the hell he's got a great surgeon.
I mean, Ghost came out in what, 90 maybe?
Yeah.
That was almost 30 years ago. The dude looks exactly the same. It's crazy.
I know.
They did it. Yeah, they did a good job with casting. He was in it. He's excellent as always. If you need somebody who's going to piss you off, go with that guy. He's got it down. But yeah, they did a great job, and I thought everything worked. The humor worked when there was some. The intensity worked. The music. James Gunn's big into using music in his films, and there was some good musical cues in this, particularly when they were lining people up against a wall and things like that.
Oh, because they're taking American songs and they're giving you Spanish versions of like
Yes.
California Dreaming and stuff like that. I love the soundtrack to this movie.
It was just enough that you're thinking this is bizarre, and
Yeah.
it totally fits. So I really dug the hell out of it.
Hunter.
I saw this the first day it came out in the theater, and then I watched it again last night. When I first saw it, I brought my daughter. We were both excited. Like you say, it's not gory. When you're in a dark movie theater with a giant screen, there's a lot of heads a popping stuff going on here. It's by watching it in both places, it seems way gorier in a movie theater
Okay.
because there's just that much head that you see exposed.
So when you watched it the second time, it didn't seem as bad to you.
The impact was less the second time around on a TV. In the movie theater, especially every time there'd be an explosion, it was so loud we were jumping in our seats. And Alamo theaters are great for that. When they know that there's a movie that has like a good soundtrack or kind of jump scares, they amp the sound up. So we were jumping every time these things were going off. I loved it then. I thought it was one of my favorite movies of the year, would be at the end. And I loved it even more the second time around. I thought it hit all the right notes. It had just a good amount of humor, a lot of tension, a lot of just douchebags that you just hate in this movie. Couple of insanely pretty women, especially what's her name? Adria Arjona, who played Leandra, who was the main guy's squeeze. What was Mike? Mike, who reminded me of Charlie Day.
Yeah, he's from the newsroom, I believe.
Yeah, he looked kind of like disheveled, and I expected him to like run around with his rat catcher bat to try to defend himself. But I thought I loved that movie, and it might have gone up another notch on my end of the year list watching it a second time.
All right. Well, I had heard a lot of mixed reviews about this movie and people saying negative things about it when it came out. And I wanted to go see it, but I didn't. So I was really looking forward to this. And I got to tell you, I love this movie. I was like, oh my God, this movie. And I think a lot of it is because James Gunn wrote it and casted it. So, Jason, along what you were saying, a lot of familiar faces. I love that somebody from Office Space was in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And he's douchey as ever. You see a lot of, like, they've got Michael Rooker. And then his sidekick was the dude from The Dark Knight who was like the Joker's henchman.
Oh yeah.
You've got Sean Gunn as the, oh man, we're all gonna die. The water is tainted. Lot of one of the women was like the bartender from A Perfect Storm. So a lot of character actors, familiar faces, people from like the tall guy from ER. There was a guy from The Mentalist.
The big guy from ER, boy, did he get old, right?
Yeah.
He's no Tony Goodwin.
No.
So the cast alone, the writing was so good in this. There was a great balance of humor and horror. And if you ever watch Slither, a James Gunn classic, I love that movie. Kind of same thing. And as I said before, parallels to the Purge. I like this better than the Purge because the cast and the writing was sharper. So there was more laughs sprinkled in. And then it's funny because you guys both, I was impressed by the gore in this movie. And then listening to you talk, I said, I think what happens is there's like sort of this buildup where nothing's really happening because it's office life. Then things get going. And then they sort of save a lot of stuff for the third act. And so there's just some kills and splatter and heads getting it and things but they save it sort of for the third act. So there's more impact because they haven't been doing it the whole time. So there's some tremendous kills in this movie, but they sort of pick and choose where their spots really well. So I would have to give this movie, I was pleasantly surprised and one of my favorite movies of the year so far.
This also has my favorite deceptive character in a movie in a long time. I have to talk about it in the spoiler section, but there's a running character in this that you think's going to go left and goes right.
Yeah. I guess one thing that's great about this movie, and we can get into it more in spoilers, is you're watching and sort of expecting where this is going to go, and you can't really guess where it's going to go. And that's one of the fun things about it is that for everybody who says it's formulaic, there's a lot of circumstances where like, nope, that's not what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So
I thought for a movie that I didn't look up what the budget was on this, but at no point did I ever think this was a cheap movie, which is one thing. This was put together by Blumhouse, and they can make a budget go forever. None of their stuff I watch ever feels incredibly cheap or anything.
It was $5 million.
wow,
That's incredible. It does not feel like that.
It made $4 million on its first weekend.
just the casting alone, I would think would cost that much money.
I don't know how they did it, but even the effects where the shutters are going up on the outside of the building, it all looked good. It all felt good. And they did a really good job, I thought, not explaining what's happening, but showing you that these people are completely locked in. They're not getting out no matter what they do. So they had guys with torches trying to cut through the steel or whatever the hell the metal was. And it's just a simple way of saying you're not getting out of here. So you don't have to worry about this anymore. But they don't go into what's going on as much as a lot of movies would, and I felt like that was a positive because then I'm not tripping up on all the details.
Yeah, this premise is one of those things, kind of like The Purge, where the movie's only going to work if you buy the premise. The premise is, what if they walled everybody in at work and made you have to kill your coworkers? So that's the what if, that's the premise. So they have to get to that quickly and make it relatively believable. And they do a really good job of, like, for skeptics like us to go, that's so dumb. If that would happen, you'd do this, or you'd say that, or whatever. They do a lot of like covering their bases enough, so you're like, okay, they're all locked in. They tried this, they said that, blah blah. Go for it. There's no movie if this doesn't happen. So
right, and plus, anytime they would come to a point where you think, all right, maybe whatever their morality will get the best of them or their logical thinking, something forces their hand to push them further to places they don't want to go. And I thought that was awesome.
I was just going to say the same thing. The brilliant device of this is the timer. So they don't have time to sit around and talk and kumbaya and figure out what we're going to do, because you've got 1 hour or 30 minutes or whatever it is, and people are dying. So that timer is just a constant force through the movie that keeps it from dragging, keeps it from, again, getting caught up in details and things. These people don't have time for that crap.
No, and especially there's big stakes. It's like you have 2 hours to kill 30. If not, we kill 60.
yeah,
Right.
That's just crazy.
And it's random, so one of them could be you. So it really does a good job of showing why people would just start killing each other, because if it's not them, it's you. So right. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of timers, that seems like a good segue to switch into the spoiler section. So why don't we let people go if they don't want to be spoiled, because there's a lot of fun stuff to talk about if you've seen the movie. So with that, everybody, let's do your final ratings on this. Jason?
I say, not that it's in the theaters anymore, but it would definitely be worth seeing. In fact, I wish I'd gone to see it. I'm like you, I'd heard some mixed things that surprised me, because I'd really been looking forward to it, and I decided against it, and I wish I'd gone. So definitely.
I will be buying it. So when it's out on Blu-ray, I have to own this. This is one of those ones I know I can watch again and again. I don't know if it says anything about the movie or about my state of mind, but I want to own this.
Yeah, that's a good way to rate it too, because I barely ever buy movies anymore. So to get me to buy one, and I'd love to see the extras on this. I can't recommend it enough. I wish I had seen it in the theater. I would not have been disappointed. One of my favorite movies of the year, and it's funny. It's horrific. Go see it in the theater. I would have. It's worth paying for on VOD, and like you, I'd contemplate picking this up on Blu-ray. All right. With that, to learn more about us, go to finalguys.com. We generally do a live broadcast of this on Tuesday nights, but this week we did Monday because of the 4th of July holiday. So next week. If you want to tune in, go to our YouTube channel, which the link is on our website for the live broadcast of the podcast. But you can find all the links to everything else on finalguys.com. Gentlemen, anything else to say before we go to spoilers?
Well, check us next week and find out if any one of us blew our fingers off during 4th of July. I know I'm going to try my damnedest, like I do every year.
That sounds good. Okay, let's go to spoilers.
I give it one thumb up.
3, 2, 1. Spoiler alert.
Spoilers.
So, who wants to go first? It seems like one thing that surprised me was they show like those fire ants or whatever in the terrarium. One gets out, and I'm like, oh, somebody's definitely going to get their head smashed into that, and fire ants are going to. It was Chekhov's fire ants. Like, I thought they'd show them, they're going to use them, and then they never did. And that was like just another one of those things. I'm like, oh, they're not playing to the expectation. They sort of made you think that you're going to get this horror movie moment, and it never comes into play. So,
yes, but at the same time, that showed you the end of the movie because one ant got out of where they were all locked in. So that was the end. That's the way I took it. But I expected somebody to get smashed by those ants too. But yeah, complete foreshadowing right there.
good pickup.
I said this before, I love the character who had just started there. I know in real life her name is Melanie Diaz. I remember she was in Be Kind, Rewind, that weird Jack Black movie. Her name is Danny in this movie. So this is her first day on the job, and naturally she starts when just everything goes south real fast. And she spends the entire movie like a mouse, just, running into the basement and getting up on the roof. And she's always just out of the main scrum. And you think in this movie, you just go, something's up with her. She's going to be the one to save the day. She's going to be the one to survive, especially as they're counting down. You realize how many kills people have. And it's like at one point you're going, if she just kills one person, she's the winner. And then she drops into the elevator, and then it opens up and her head gets blown off with like 5 minutes left to go in the movie. I thought that was fucking awesome.
That's it in a nutshell. When she died, that's what took that movie from here to there. Like you're like, oh damn! I totally thought she was going to make it to all the way to the end, and instead,
yeah, done. And also her, and also Mike's girlfriend,
yeah,
Leandra, who just you don't see her get shot, but she gets shot, and she just sits there and kind of bleeds out, and which killed me because I think I fell in love with her. I think maybe she's above Gal Gadot now. She might be the top for me.
Well, let's take it easy.
Oh, that's my type. Trust me. Especially with little tattoos on her neck.
I thought her character was probably the most interesting because she was probably the most conflicted of the whole thing.
Right.
She kind of went back and forth between sides a little bit, and I thought that everyone else, except for maybe one of the killer guys, either just went to one side or the other fairly quickly. But I liked her conflict.
I did too, because the first one I was going, what a bitch. She's such a stupid jerk. And after watching, she goes, oh no, she's not. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much how it would go.
And you want to talk about surprises? Michael Rooker, I thought he was going to be way more a piece of this, and then they kind of kill him off early, and his death was awesome.
Oh man, his head looked like a caved in eggshell.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh my god, he's such a badass. You thought he was going to be such a player in this, and then, but that's like real life. Like, you get hit in the head with a wrench.
I couldn't figure out whether him and his partner, were they an Of Mice and Men pairing, or were they lovers? I couldn't figure that out.
There was a weird dynamic there, yeah.
I was going Mice and Men, but you explained it twice, so maybe you're picking up something I wasn't.
Take the wrench to the rabbits there, Lenny.
Yeah, there was something weird there. I got to say, I like the Michael Rooker thing too, and I've seen this in, I think it's maybe the third movie I've watched this year, that the big stars who you expect to be a player through the whole movie just suddenly die, and there's no warning, there's no expectation. And I like that because it really makes the stakes feel higher when they're just going to kill who you expect to be the star right away. Then you just think, well, they can do anything in this movie.
Did you notice that there were a lot of ginormous men in this movie?
Yeah.
Holy God! Especially that the guy who was on the bad guy side with the beard, the kind of like salt and pepper beard and
Oh
everything, who was
yeah.
smiling when people would get killed. I'm like, that guy looked. He freaked me out.
It's
I
just
think.
like you said, the casting again, man. Those are scary dudes to be locked in a building with who want to kill you. You're not
Ooh,
just going to punch them in the face and be done with it.
No,
I think the most unrealistic part of the movie, besides the fantastic circumstances are in, is when those guys have everybody lined up against the wall and they're deciding how many people they've got to execute, so they're going by criteria.
mm-hmm.
The the main character guy is one of the people lined up against the wall, and he'd been causing trouble already. And I just felt like, you know what, they would have just popped him immediately. They wouldn't have like put him in the line. However, again, we don't have a movie if they do that, so they didn't. That
Right.
there was like, out of all the things going on, I was like, that guy would have just popped him right there. But at the same time, what was going on in that room when they were like trying to decide, okay, we got to kill 30 people. Here's how we're doing it. Who's got kids? How old are you? Get over there. I'm the guy with the gun. I'm making the decisions.
That was such a powerful scene too, of just like killing one person after. And how do they take it? Do they take it in stride? Do they beg for their lives? Oh God,
Yeah, that was
rough.
intense. I do want to say something. One of you had brought up about the girl getting shot who'd survived the whole time. It was her first day and all that. I
Right.
saw some people complaining that the ending was the obvious ending with the good guy being the one to make it, and I disagree with them on that. At first, I thought so right away, but then I thought no. Through the whole movie, I was expecting it to be that woman whose first day it was,
Right.
and when she just gets killed, again, you feel like anything can happen in this movie. So I completely disagree with them that said the ending was obvious. I think in a normal film where they're not killing the biggest stars right away and they're not setting up all these red herrings, yes, that would have been the obvious ending. But because this movie kind of subverted all that stuff throughout, having it be the kind of main guy, I thought actually worked in its favor.
The thing is, too, though, the obvious ending might be more that somehow they figure out a way around it and not everybody else dies.
Like the
That was
couple
kind of what I was
survives.
waiting for, is they
I thought
figure out a way out or something. And
I thought Mike and his girlfriend would survive somehow. They'd find a way. Here's another thing that I love that they did. They handled it just right. Now, when Mike he survives, he gets taken into the shack. He gets introduced to the weird-looking Marlon Brando Island of Dr. Moreau.
another veteran of the James Gunn movies.
Yeah. When he shoots him, there's that moment where he's just shooting him again and again. He's standing over him, and in lesser hands, he'd have something Schwarzenegger 80s esque stupid to say right there, and he said nothing. He just shot him and he walked out the door, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Thank you for not cheesing that scene up."
You
Yeah,
know what else? In that scene, they show the board that controls the bombs in everybody's heads, and it got me thinking. The main character guy, there was a few chances where the voice could have flicked his switch and blew his head off. And I think they call this the Belko Experiment. I think they were watching him and going, let's not blow this guy up. He's really interesting. Let's keep him in the game. You
Oh,
know?
they were absolutely choosing after a while who to kill and who not to kill.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of cool. And then they had to explain the movie somehow, and I thought they got to where they needed to get pretty
Do you think they'll
efficiently.
do a sequel?
Did it make enough money?
Yes,
I,
it did.
I actually think that a sequel to this might end up being, unfortunately, like the uh, Deep Blue Sea we're talking about, where somebody else is going to get a hold of it in the 5 years, and on Sci-Fi Belko too. And
Or they could do a Purge, because the Purge, I think, has been a solid trilogy so far.
The Purge keeps getting better in a lot of ways.
Right. So I think if you stuck with the same creative team, I think you could, because I mean, they left it. It said end phase 1, begin phase 2.
yeah,
And you realize he's not the only one. It's been happening all over the world.
I hope
That-
so. That'd be great.
Or it could be Cabin in the Woods when it's just over.
That ending reminded me of a movie I saw, and I've been trying to think of what the name of it was, and I can't. But it's similar structure, kind of. People wake up and they have to finish a race. And they don't know how they got there, where they came from, and they can kill each other, they can do anything they want, they just can't cheat the race. They have to finish. And at the end, one guy gets through, and when he does, I believe you find out aliens put them there or something like that, and he gets beamed into another race with a bunch of survivors from other alien races, and he has to win that one then. So the ending was very similar to this. I saw it on Netflix a couple years ago, and I can't remember what it was.
Oh my god!
I've been trying to think the name of it. I was hoping maybe one of our listeners could help me out.
Yeah, please, because I want to know. It has aliens. I want to watch it.
They're not a big part of it, but it was a pretty good film. Right. Same structure. I also, the little bombs, the implants the guy had at the end, I was really glad they brought that back, because they'd spent quite a bit of time building that up, and those guys never actually tried to blow the wall up. And I was thinking, boy, that's a pretty big thread to not finish. And then it was just perfect the way they brought it in at the end.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about the bombs a little bit, so when they did it, I'm like, oh, okay, great.
Very interesting, because I'm sitting there thinking, how the hell is this guy going to get out of this? He's completely surrounded here by guys. That's cool.
Right. What was your favorite scene in the movie?
When they lined everyone up at the wall. I thought that was so intense.
I think mine was when... Was it Sean Gunn who was sitting there going, oh, it's all in my mind, it's all in my mind, and everyone's hiding under the tables in the cafeteria, and just their heads are exploding one after the other, just right down the row? That was my favorite scene.
That was really good.
I kind of like when they're all in the hallway in the basement, I think it is, and I think the people say whoever's got the most kills will be the one to survive, and so, like, the bigger guy, like, who has been a nice guy most of the time, is just like, okay, crap, I've got to kill people. And all of a sudden, everybody just sort of turns on each other. That was a kind of great moment. That's when the woman goes up into the elevator shaft.
Mm-hmm.
The elevator shaft was awesome, too, by the way.
My other favorite scenes were any close-ups with Adria Arjona. And she's, by the way, guys, she is going to be in the next Pacific Rim movie that comes out next year.
Excellent.
Really? Nice.
So she'll be with another guy who looks like Charlie Day, except it will be Charlie Day.
I really liked the part at the beginning. At first I didn't. I thought, oh, this is weird. When the first guy's head explodes and Tony, I think it's Goldwyn. I think that's the third different way I've pronounced his name now.
Whatever we want to say.
He just goes right up and starts playing with the guy's head.
Yeah, like sticking a pen in it.
Yeah. Thinking, what? You wouldn't do that. Well, it turns out this guy's a psycho, so that actually totally fit.
Who was also, they also said, was Special Forces at one time.
Yeah, so he recognized that it was an exit wound, not an entrance wound.
But just as quickly as he went up to it, I'm thinking, what the hell is this guy's deal?
Yeah, he's really weird.
Yeah.
At least he didn't lick the pen.
I put this right with Slither. Like I almost watched Slither the other night because I love that movie so much. It's got a lot of the James Gunn faces in it. It's just like a very enjoyable movie. Like, can't get.
Let me see your James Gunn face. Ah.
All right. I think that's a wrap.
Yeah. No. Look, we all like the movie. This is 2 weeks in a row.
I know, it's weird.
You know what? We might be coming to the end of this little streak next week. I think maybe
next week, the big summer release of Spider-Man. So we're going to see Spider-Man. We'll watch a bunch of horror movies as well. So we'll cover our horror bases, especially since we all have Shudder now. I have a feeling we're going to be going deep into the bowels. The first couple of weeks of Shudder, we're going to cover a lot. You're going to get all the good stuff out of the way, and suddenly it's like, ugh.
They need to start sponsoring us.
Yeah. So I just watched House 4, and I poked my eyeballs out.
Okay, fellas. Well, let's call that one a wrap, and thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next week on The Final Guys.
Call me Adria Arjona.
I don't know how to follow that. Good night.